There's so many fun board games out there, but there are some that I enjoy more than others. These are my top 10 favorite board games of all time. Now let's start with number 10, Lost Cities. Oh, Lost Cities. I really enjoy this game. I mean, obviously, it needed to be in my top 10. But the person that I play with the most is my wife. So this is a game that we play a lot. Lost Cities is essentially a competitive solitaire. But there's so much more to it than just placing cards. At the start of the game, each player starts with 8 cards in their hand. Each player has to play a card from their hand onto the board. Now, there are 5 different expeditions that one can enter. Now, when someone enters an expedition, they automatically pay 20 points to enter that expedition. So one starts off already negative 20. So you really want to build up more cards on that expedition so you can score more and get out of that hole and get positive points. Because again, whoever has the most points in the end of 3 rounds wins. Now, there are more possibilities to score even more points if you use wager cards. Wager cards are essentially an opportunity to double your points, triple your points, and even quadruple your points. But there's a risk involved as well, because if you don't get enough points past 20, if you have 1, 2, 3 wagers, you could potentially double, triple, quadruple your losses. So you could put yourself in a real hole real quick. You really need to strategize on which cards to hold and which cards to use. We always have to play a card from our hand. But sometimes you don't necessarily have to play a card to join an expedition or add to an expedition. If there's a card that you don't want, you could play it in the middle of the board. Now, the caveat to it, the opponent has the opportunity to grab that card from the board and use it on their turn. So you really want to be careful on which cards that you play so that you don't give the opponent more points. Such a simple game, but there's so much strategy to it. This is Lost Cities. Now, on to number 9. Heat, Pedal to the Metal is essentially a racing game. Pretty straightforward. First one across the finish line wins. But there's more to it, don't worry. In Heat, you would start off with a hand of 7 cards. And depending on which gear you're in, whether it be first, second, third, or fourth gear, will determine how many cards you play. The cards that you play are essentially the speed that your car will move. And one could easily think, well, that's easy. I'll just go 4th gear and I'll go past everyone. But there's a little bit more to it, because on the board there are certain turns that you have to make and you need to stay at a certain speed. Some will be a 7 and some of the turns could be as slow as having a 2 speed. So you really want to be careful the speed that you're going at on those turns. And what I really enjoy about this game is you can't just gun it. Sometimes you need to shift gears, go slower, make sure that you can make that turn, because if you go a speed that's faster than the actual indicated speed for that turn, you will collect heat. Heat are cards that you will eventually get into your hand and they clog up your hand. You can't use them. They just essentially slow you down. And if you're not careful, if you have too much heat in your hand, then you won't have any cards to actually move. So the question is, how do you get rid of the heat from your hand? Well, you need to be on first or second gear to cool down the engine, get rid of the heat so that you can start getting more cards with more movement so that you can gun it and get past the other opponents. So I really like the strategy behind it, because it's not just see who goes the fastest, but you really want to strategize on some of the incoming turns throughout the track. So heat is a tool to utilize, but you want to be careful on using it, because again, you can use heat and stress the engine to make those turns. But if there's no more heat from your engine, you can't take chances. You have to cool down. You have to be on gear 1, gear 2, so that you can cool down and put heat back onto your engine. It's a game about hand management. Being careful with which cards that you want to use and which ones that you want to hold on to. Being careful with how much heat that you collect or use. If you're looking for something different, something fun, and again, a racing game, I highly recommend Heat Pedal to the Metal. Feed the Kraken is a social deduction game, and man, this one is fun. Again, they're all fun, but I love this one. I'm not good at social deduction games, but they're just so much fun to play, especially with others who aren't gamers, because it involves a lot of table talk, just interacting with one another, and some bluffing. There's a unique twist to this game where it's not just two teams, but rather there's three. There are the pirates, there are the sailors, and there's a cult leader who's crazy and wants to be thrown to the Kraken. Each team has their own objective. The sailors want to make sure that their ship makes it to the island to the right, while the pirates want to make sure that the ship ends up at the island on the left. And the cult leader wants to make sure that the ship lands at a Kraken space, and they want to make sure that they are thrown overboard to the Kraken. If that happens, he wins. And again, as mentioned, what I really enjoy about this game is that there's just not two teams where it's just who are the pirates, who are the sailors. But that cult leader really puts a wrench into things, because as the game progresses, the cult leader can actually convert sailors or even pirates into cult followers, and their objective changes. So while the pirates know who they are, throughout the game, one of them could be converted into a cult follower, and so then their loyalties have changed and they don't know who to trust. It's very easy to visualize if you're winning or if you're losing and know what to do next. Because sometimes in these social deduction games, there are objectives, but you can't visually see what's happening because it's all just a social interaction. While here in this game, you can visually see what's happening, where the ship is actually going, and what you need to do to make sure that the ship goes where you want it to go. So if you are looking for a social deduction game, I highly recommend Feed the Kraken. Now, for my next one, you may need to put your seatbelt on because we're going for a ride. For number 7, I have Thunder Road Vendetta. And yes, this is another racing game. I'm actually not a huge fan of racing games, but it's just fun. It's so good. This one's different in the sense that you are racing, you are trying to make it to a finish line, but there's some chaos involved along the way. Each player is trying to make it to the finish line, but that's not the only way you can win. Because in this game, you can slam your cars to other cars, knock them on the road, you can shoot the cars, you can call a helicopter and shoot down another car. It's just complete chaos. And if you approach it in that sense, knowing that, hey, my cars may blow up this round, it's totally fine. You can strategize all you want, but there's some chance involved with this game, so you just need to learn to accept that. And if you do, you'll have a great time. What each player does is they all have 4 dice. So every player rolls their dice, and they can assign their dice to one of their cars, because each player starts with 3 cars. Any of the dice that they assign to their car is the speed that their car goes. You can also assign one of your die to the control module, which is just additional abilities that you can do, whether it be drifting, calling an airstrike, which is calling the helicopter, or even repairing your car. I'm not a huge fan in games that involve a lot of just chance, but this game is just so much fun. You know what your objective is. You're trying to make it to the finish line. You can chuck some dice, have a great time with friends, and just blow up some cars. And at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want to have a good time with those that you play around with and just have a nice interaction with each other. It's so much fun. Highly recommend it. Thunder Road Vendetta. For number 6, I have Zoo Vadis, a negotiating game. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't enjoy negotiating games, but this one, I really enjoy. See, the thing about negotiating games is, for me, they're just really hard for me to grasp. I've played Moonrakers, I enjoy, I don't love, but sometimes it's just hard for me to just negotiate and manage what to do and just how to interact and what to say to make sure that I have an opponent to help me, because sometimes I don't know how I can make it to my objective. While in Zoo Vadis, the objective is very easy to grasp. Each player is a different animal trying to make it into the star exhibit. Everyone starts in one of the beginning exhibits on the bottom of the board. Everyone's trying to slowly work their way up to the star exhibit. Now, how they do that is they need the majority vote of the animals from their exhibit to make it to the next one. Any player that votes to agree gets a laurel token, which is essentially money. Now, once you make it into the star exhibit, doesn't mean that you won. It just means that you qualify to win. Because the interesting thing is, once all the star exhibits are filled, whoever has the most money wins. So to qualify to win, you need to make it to the star exhibit. But to actually win, you need to have the most money. So there's this fine balance of making sure you make it into the star exhibit, but also making sure that you have money. You don't want to rush yourself into the star exhibit and not make much money. But also, you don't want to take your time, have all the money, and not actually make it into the star exhibit. So there's that fine balance that I find really interesting, but it's really easy for me to grasp. As again, I'm not good at negotiating games and they're not particularly my favorite, but this one I just absolutely love because I know what my objective is, I know what I need to do, and it's just a great time. Now, there are more actions involved than just putting an animal and just seeing if the other opponents will allow you to move forward. Each animal has different abilities, but the abilities that you have, you cannot use on yourself, but rather they're negotiating pieces that you can use to help other people. So you can only use your abilities to help others. But if you're gonna help them, you're gonna want some money. Now, how much money? That's up to you. It can lead to some arguments, but often it just leads to great banter and a great time. And you learn quite a lot about the people you play with. Like, who knew grandma could be such a loan shark? Again, great game, absolutely love it. If you want an opportunity to interact with those on the table and not just look at a board, I highly recommend Zoo Vadis. Now we're halfway through my list. For number 5, I got a good one. Number 5 is Star Wars, the deck building game. Again, the person who I play with the most is my wife, and we love playing this game. Star Wars is a deck building game where each player starts off with 10 cards. Now, throughout the game, as you play, you're building your own deck, and it changes. So as you play, you're trying to destroy each other's bases. The first one to destroy 4 bases wins. You could even shorten the game to 3 or 2 bases, or lengthen the game to even 5, 6, 7. Throughout the game, you're trying to destroy each other's bases, but also there's a marketplace in front of you. That's where the marketplace that you would buy more cards and build your deck. The marketplace changes, so the options change every game. And you're trying to build a deck that really complements each other in regards to the cards that you have. Another fun aspect about this game is, as the rebels, you can't buy the Empire cards, right? The good guys can't buy the bad guy cards, and the bad guys can't buy the good guy cards, but you can destroy them. So if you don't want your opponent to buy that card, you can actually destroy that card with the cards that you have as well. Because once a card is bought, there's no way to destroy it. They have it for the rest of the game. So sometimes you may think, should I attack their base, or should I destroy that Darth Vader card that's right there and that could potentially ruin this game for me? An interesting thing about this game is you can really string long combos with this game, where you can play a card where there's draw 2 cards and you draw that, and then you play this card and it allows you to buy a card, and you play another card and then you could string 3 more attacks. You can feel really clever really quickly, and it's just really satisfying. I'm using really a lot because I really like this game. So if you're looking for a competitive 2-player game to play with someone, I highly recommend Star Wars, the deck building game. It's so easy to pick up. Every person that I've brought it to enjoys it. They pick it up really quick. Even if they're not gamers or play board games a lot, it's just really easy to comprehend. you have a deck, and you're building your deck as you play. That mechanic is so much fun. I really enjoy it, and it's gonna lean into one of my other favorite games as well, Star Wars, the deck building game. And for number 4, we're gonna stick with deck building because I absolutely love this mechanic. For number 4, I have the Quest for El Dorado. The Quest for El Dorado is a deck building racing game. Now hear me out. Deck building, again, you're building your deck as you play the game, but you're racing as well. The Quest for El Dorado is a deck building racing game. The first one who makes it to the gates of El Dorado wins. Each player starts with the same 8 cards in their deck. Each card may have different colors, whether it be blue for water, green for the jungle, or yellow for money. On a player's turn, they would play their cards that they have to move spaces. So if they play a green card, they can move a green space. If they play a blue card, they can move a blue space. And any cards that they have remaining afterwards, they can use to buy a card from the marketplace. But in this game, you can only buy 1 card per turn. What I really enjoy about this game is, again, it's very easy to pick up. You can play this with non-gamers, people who aren't into board games, because it's really easy to understand and pick up and just play. You're trying to make it to the gate of El Dorado. You're racing. Now how you do so are with these cards. You can build your cards through this deck building mechanic by buying more cards. And what I really enjoy as well is you want to look at the journey that you're going to take. You're going to look at the obstacles that you may face down the road. So you really want to be mindful of the cards that you want to buy so that you make your journey successful and you make it there first and beat the other opponents. And another aspect that I really enjoy is that you can block players as well. If you make it to a space ahead of someone else, they can't make it to the space that you're on. So you can block people and really be strategic with where you place your explorer. The Quest for El Dorado is also a very quick game. You can play a game within 30 minutes. There is some setup where you have to put up the cards, but once you play, you go and it's done. And you want to play again and again and again. That's what you want in a game. There's that fun interaction where you're blocking with people. There's that fun table talk, and you can play it with your family, with your friends. I highly recommend the Quest for El Dorado. Now we're making it to my top 3, and boy, are these very special to me because we play these games a lot. For number 3, I have Unmatched Tales to Amaze. Unmatched is essentially a dueling game that you can play up to 4 players. Now, there are different sets of Unmatched. This one is the one that I really liked in particular, but you can mix and match different sets as the game works the same. The only thing that's different about this game is that you can play this cooperatively. This is by no means a tutorial, but a quick gist of the game is each player chooses a character that they want to play with, and it's very asymmetrical, meaning each character that they choose has different abilities from the other player. Every character has their own health, which may be different from each other, and the last one standing wins. So you use cards to attack, defend, or even play schemes against each other to outwit your opponent and be the last one standing. What I really enjoy about Unmatched Tales to Amaze is that it's cooperative, meaning we get to all work together. We can all choose different characters with their own abilities, but we're all working towards the same objective, which is for this one, defeating Mothman or Martian Invader. So these are essentially 2 different bosses, 2 different boards that you can play in this game. Mothman has the objective to destroy 5 different bridges. If he does so successfully, Mothman wins. Or if he defeats all players in the game, Mothman wins. The only way for you to win is to defeat Mothman. But Mothman isn't alone. He has sidekicks, and some of these can pack a punch. So each player works cooperatively, seeing which sidekicks to attack first, who to attack Mothman, which bridge do you want to protect, so that Mothman doesn't reach his objective. So there's a lot of conversation involved, and everybody's working towards the same objective, which really helps so no one feels left out. The cool thing about this co-op version is it can be mixed and matched with other unmatched sets. Marvel sets such as Spider-Man, She-Hulk. You can use any of these characters in this co-op version as well. It really brought to life my love for Unmatched. It's such a great game. Highly recommend it. Now, for my second favorite game of all time, I have to ask you a question. Have you ever heard someone play the violin by itself? Or the cello? Or even the horn? By themselves, individually, they sound beautiful. But together, oh, it's majestic. For number 2 on my list, I have Root. Root is an asymmetrical area control game that can be played from 2 to 4 players. And when I say asymmetrical, I mean each of these characters that you play are completely different from each other. One player can play as the Marquis the Cat, or another can play as the Woodland Alliance. Each of these factions play completely different from each other. Essentially, 4 different people are playing 4 different games, but with the same objective, which is to score 30 points. The first one to score 30 points wins the game. Now, how they score points can be completely different from each other, but there are some similarities. It is an area control game. You are trying to move from area to area and destroy each other's towers and bases and enemies. By doing so, you score points, but there are other points that can be scored depending on the faction that you choose. This one is not an easy teach for others, so I will say that up front. But once you learn the mechanics of it, oh, this game, it sings. If you're looking for a challenge and something to learn, I highly recommend Root. But if you're often playing with different players, I don't recommend it for your play group. But if you often play games with the same group of people, I highly recommend to give Root a shot. Now, for my number 1 game, I'm really excited to share. Whether I win, whether I lose, I always have a good time with this game. For number 1, I have Dune Imperium Uprising. Dune Imperium Uprising is a worker placement deck building game. This game can be played from 1 to 4 players, and there's even a 6-player mode as well. Each player starts with the same 10 cards in their deck. Again, this is a deck building game. Now, what they do with their cards is a little bit different. They would play one of these cards, and whatever the actual icon is on the left is where they're able to place one of their agents onto a space on the board. Wherever they place their agent, they would reap the benefits of whatever the reward is on that board. Now, once an agent is on that board, none of the other opponents can place their agent on that same space as well. So you really want to be strategic on where you want to place your agents. The objective is the first one who scores 10 victory points wins. There's a lot of different ways you can win this game. And I think that's what I really enjoy about this game is just the options that you have. You don't have to go one way. You can go a different way. And it's really easy for me to visually see what's going on because I'm looking at the board, what spaces are available and what spaces I can take. And this game's all about adapting, learning how to adapt when spaces are occupied. And a cool feature about this version as well is there are spies. Spies are an opportunity for you to place a cylinder on a space and you're able to place an agent there even if a space is occupied. So you really want to think ahead of time asking yourself, will this space be very popular later down the road? Will this be a space that I want to take later that may be taken by someone else? So if I have that spy there, I'll be able to take it even if it's occupied. So you're thinking about the present, but you're also thinking about the future as well, planning ahead of time. How this game is sequenced out, it just flows really well. From the agent phase to the reveal phase and the combat phase, it just all works out. Again, this is not a tutorial. This is just very quick overview of what I enjoy about the game, but there's just so much involved to it. The 2 mechanics that are involved in this game, I highly enjoy. Deck building for one, and worker placement as well. I just absolutely love this game. This was very easy for me to pick as my number 1. This is my absolute favorite game. If you're wanting something a little bit more complex, if you're ready to take the next step to more of like a medium weight game, I highly recommend this. Without a doubt, you will have a good time playing this. These are my top 10 all-time favorite board games. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. This took a lot of time to make. So if you did enjoy this, please push the like button below. And if you'd like to see more content like this, feel free to subscribe. I'd like to hear, what is your favorite game of all time? Do you have one? Please leave a comment down below, as I'd love to hear it. Thanks again for watching. Until next time.